Hey, this is Gary Kay. We are here live at InfoComm 2022 here in Las Vegas, the first big InfoComm show in 3 years. And part of InfoComm, and in InfoComm's DNA, has been digital signage. Digital signage has been one of the fastest growing segments of the AV community. We're all looking forward to having a dedicated digital signage show return to Vegas and not too long from now. And digital signage is a big part of our DNA. This panel is all about smarter digital signage, and we'll talk about what that means ultimately. And I've got an amazing panel here. I'm excited to be hosting this. Again, my name is Gary Kay. I'm with the rAVe agency. I'm excited to be part of this. We're here live. We're actually coming to you live, not just on ravepubs.com, but also all over the interweb, thanks to Sony and their technology as well. And I want to have the panelists introduce themselves because I want to start with you, Bob, because you're a big player in the industry. I think some people have heard of Crestron.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I'm Bob Bevalacco. I'm Director of Technology Partnerships for Crestron. About 10-minute walk over in the West Hall. Very excited to be here.
Excellent. Irfan?
I'm Irfan Khan. We are located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have products across digital signage, workplace experience, and device management. We focus on the Android ecosystem of devices, and we primarily focus on education, manufacturing, transportation, logistics, to name a few of the segments that we focus on.
Excellent. George?
Hi everybody, George Klopp. I am Chief Technology Officer at a company called Korbyt, otherwise known as the Mad Scientist or Head Geek. We do employee engagement software. We're really the true enterprise standard when it comes to fully featured digital signage in our industry. And a lot around creating a bond between the employee and the brand.
And I'm Christian Armstrong, Director of Business Development for Spectrio. We're a digital signage, content management, and content development company, focusing a lot on corporate communications, retail, healthcare, and education.
I'll tell you, digital signage, one thing that I think everyone agrees on is that digital signage has gone from like a wish list or sort of like a want-to-have to a must-have, especially during COVID. I mean, grocery stores transform themselves into places of help and hope during the pandemic. And even my local Whole Foods installed wayfinding and even aisle management systems thanks to digital signage. Like instead of using paper signs, they did electronically. Now since then, they've taken that content, they've taken those signs and are generating other content on the sign. So they didn't just use them for that part-time. So Christian, I'm gonna throw the first question at you. We've gone from something like a wish list to a must-have. What's happened and where are we right now with digital signage and why did that happen?
So yeah, I mean, when it started out, we needed to be more meaningful with how we were communicating with an audience, and it's really become something that it used to be just we're going to throw content on the screen because we can, and now because we had to communicate more effectively and more impactfully in the moment, we started to look at what content should we be displaying at a specific time to a specific audience, and what do they need to consume from a communication standpoint.
Yeah, and that's critical because, and we now have the technology, I'm gonna throw this to you, Bob. We now have the technology to kind of, in a really cool and non-evasive way, figure out who it is that we're talking to without violating any confidentiality. It's anonymized data, but that allows us to deliver smarter content to those displays, right?
Absolutely. So it's about a seamless experience, right? Giving clients the choice of the applications that they want. So digital signage, you want to think about it as engaging content. People are coming back from the pandemic, they're coming back into their offices. It isn't just about wayfinding and where to go. It's serving up an engaging content so that when they come back to the office, it's a welcoming experience.
Right.
Right, so Korbyt, a lot of these applications, Spectrio, a lot of the applications that Sony rAVe has embedded in the displays, very important, right, to bring that experience to the client so that not only in the conference room, but in the hallways, in the gymnasium, in the cafeterias, there's content that's specific to what's going on, and they're constantly in the know.
Irfan, I'm curious, how does, you're an integrator, let's say you're an integrator right now and you're selling hardware, and as much as we'd like to think digital signage is like selling hardware, it's not. It's a lot more sophisticated, but it's also a lot more, bigger payoff, right? There's a lot more to it, better relationship with the client, and also the ability to sell services, and you're providing a service that gives them more power and more clout, and also more of a relationship with their clients. Where do you start? Tell me what's the first step? Because obviously, Bob mentioned that Sony has a lot of this built on with system on a chip technology and the other players they have that built on on board, but it's not as simple as just installing it, is it?
Yeah, it's understanding the customer's problem and putting together a solution that makes sense. I think a lot of the technologies that exist now make it a lot easier to deploy digital signage, like the system on chip, device management, cloud solutions. It just makes it a lot easier to tailor a solution to a customer's need.
Do you provide a network that we can tap into once they've deployed it, or does the integrator need to set up their own network, or how do they manage this once it's actually been deployed, and where's the opportunity?
We provide tools in our software, and we leverage our network of AV integrators to do the installation and support.
All right, excellent, excellent. And I don't know, George, if you want to follow up on that because you got some neat insight there.
Yeah, I mean, it's about the content. It's always about the customer's problem, the content, the device. I mean, some of the trends we're seeing obviously are strong push towards SoC, but also diversity in offering, right? So making sure that it's not just about space management, which was known as office hoteling, coming back to the office, but also performance management, KPIs, and rotating that content in and out. It's not a static screen that just has wayfinding on it. You want to rotate in some KPIs, some welcome messaging, some employee engagement messaging as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the industry has changed. I mean, when we came to InfoComm 5 years ago, the hardware sign companies were totally different than the media player companies, which were totally different than the content companies. Yeah. But now you walk around Sony's booth and they've integrated all that into their Bravia displays, for example. Christian, how has that changed things, and where are we likely to see, where's like the next step of this, so that we're aware of where, what kind of relationships we should have with future vendors?
Well, I think that the great thing about it is it's really simplified deployment. So now, because of SoC, you have a very simple way to just deploy an APK and run, and it allows the organizations to focus more squarely on content and content strategy. So it's much more, now we know we can do it very easily and effectively. We can focus on what are the problems we're trying to solve from a communication standpoint, and what type of communications really matter to the audience. And it simplifies that process completely. It's not this super technical, mystical kind of technology now. It's here's the TV, here's the CMS, let's go.
All right, so I'm curious, George or Irfan, whichever one wants to take this question, or Christian as well. Not that you can't take it, Bob, but I think this is about advertising, because I'm curious, the future of digital signage, obviously a lot of these signs are going to be driven by ad content. We're on the verge of what we call digital signage being part of programmatic advertising. Any one of you can speak on sort of where we are with that and where the opportunities are for the AV community for that, because obviously when you have hundreds of thousands or millions of eyeballs on this, that's the big payoff, right?
Well, we look at our device as an IoT device, and so as you think about all the sensors that could be driving the programmatic advertising,
yeah,
it's just an extension of that IoT ecosystem. And so if you kind of look at the world that way, then all the devices that kind of support that, the data sources that will change those ads and change the program is something that we're very excited about.
And I think what you're talking about, the sensors, as in, for example, cameras, right? And knowing how many eyeballs are actually in, say, a transportation facility and how much we can charge for that. But I'm curious, do any of your platforms provide for advertising now, and how do you do it now versus programmatic? Because programmatic, you're plugging into a network that's already set. Programmatic's used for websites and mobile ads. That's the future of advertising or digital signs. But right now, you have the ability to do advertising on digital signs through the players and the CMSs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a feature called Clever Playlists. So if you want to be prescriptive about your scheduling, we offer that, of course. That's just the basics. But we also offer the ability for a given time slot to automatically go out, do a real-time bidding request for a web service call to say, hey, this particular screen is located in this location. It has these attributes. Who wants to bid on the next piece of content coming up? And then that allows anyone to bid and show that.
You've created your own programmatic platform inside
Absolutely.
of
It's all part of our Clever Playlist, which also do a lot more than that. They do randomization based on, we have machine learning in there based on content that's historically shown really well there, or based on camera analytics. We can show content that's second, third, fourth degree order, very similar to that.
So I want to kind of turn my attention to cloud, and Crestron's got the Wedx Io cloud system, which I think you're the first big brand that has a cloud management system from the AV side. I mean, ultimately, we're kind of excited and nervous about the cloud at the same time, because at the same time you see all the opportunities, you start reading these stories about hacks and things like that.
Exactly.
Where are we with that, and how is that going to affect digital signage?
Well, I mean, just to begin with, yeah, Crestron XIO Cloud is built on the Azure platform, right? So it is scalable, it is very secure. That is a concern that we have addressed, and it should not be a concern. So, a couple of features of Wedx Io. So Sony Bravia actually embedded the technology along with Crestron connected to control in the firmware of the device. So when you plug a Pro Bravia display into any ecosystem that's Crestron enabled, it becomes a native endpoint.
Okay.
You know, we talked a little bit about content delivery, kind of touch on that. Envision a conference room or anywhere in an organization where there's occupancy sensors, doesn't have to be cameras. So I have visitors coming into a gymnasium. My content now could be specific to what happens there. I could turn on my signage for sports. I could run any other content unique to that environment, right? In the cafeteria, things that the organization may be coming out with that would be important for that audience to know, right? And so XIO Cloud has a visibility into that ecosystem, right? And the AV administrator comes in, typically walks in the morning, comes into his knock center, he sees all of his devices coming online, and he can manage those devices without having to roll trucks, send people. He notices the status of the Bravias. Are they online? Are they offline? Let me turn them on, let me turn them all off, let me schedule.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful, right? It's about really saving the client's investment in resources for IT administration.
You mentioned some of the features that you mentioned remind me of collaboration as well, because we're also using the same technology to manage who's using a room, how long they're using it, who's abandoning a room, how long the meetings are, what equipment's working in the room.
Right.
I wonder at what point do those two industries merge, because you have all these displays sitting in these rooms, and even classrooms that could be signage displays whenever they're not being used, and then vice versa. These signage displays that if you put a little QR code in the corner, I could collaborate with that display on the fly. Where are we with that? Because I see that as a big opportunity, and it's a merger of those two industries.
Yeah, so let me touch on that. Yesterday I was here doing a presentation on Think AV, right? So we're talking about signage, we're talking about cloud connectivity, we're talking about control, we're talking about Sony. All of this has to play together in the same ecosystem, right? So for example, in a conference room, typically there's going to be a wireless presentation system, right?
Yeah.
So Crestron has their Air Media solution, Air Media 3, that sits behind the display, unseen, that delivers the wireless presentation, the one click to join conferencing. Well, that application also has, built within its firmware, a number of digital signage applications, right? So in the UC platform, and right around to the side of the stage, you'll see Sony Bravia running a Crestron Flex, where there's a you could join a live conference in Crestron's booth. When the conferencing system isn't online, the display is static. Why not leverage digital signage in that room, right? And whatever your content may be. So it's maximizing the investment, right? So that display now becomes integrated with the entire room. It's a conferencing system, it's a content engaging device. It can be managed remotely through the cloud. Applications like digital signage could be managed through XY code in the Sony Bravia displays.
And that's because of the fact that we have the Android on board, or the SoC technology that's allowing us to host what we need to host, but it's connected to the cloud.
Absolutely.
Okay. And one of the elements of that I think that's been tough for our industry has been the creative side of it, because it's one thing to send content there, and if all I'm going to do is say when my next meeting is, that's easy. But to make it look worthy of watching and make it creative, that's the weak link, I think, in our industry. I see you shaking your head, Christian. I mean, obviously you've dealt with this.
I have, and I see a lot of challenges that clients have these days, especially with resource and demand. So getting the creative teams that are handling marketing and collateral and communications to do that content doesn't always fly. So where we've seen a lot of the trend go lately is working with those clients to help them not only define what's the content strategy and how can we make the most impact out of these screens where they are, whether it's a conference room, a lobby, wherever, but then also making sure that we're providing them support and assistance to execute that content effectively and providing that to them as a service, because you're not going to have a digital signage expert in most organizations.
Right.
And if you're going to really see the value out of it, you've got to be on point with the messaging and how you're communicating.
It's funny you said it, because when you walk around the show, one of the big messages or claims by the big display brands is, well, we've got a media player here in the in the display, so you don't have to worry about any of that. But the reality of this situation is that you still have to have a champion internally, or you have to have a system set up, because you can't say, and I actually heard one earlier today say, well, this is so easy that the receptionist could just handle all the content. And then when the receptionist leaves, who's going to handle the content? So I'm curious, like, how are we addressing that? Because we're kind of oversimplifying it. As I walk around the show here today, we're still oversimplifying it. Go ahead, Irfan.
One of the things that we're seeing is our customers are asking for getting the data that's running their business up on a screen. And so, these are tools like Salesforce and Tableau and Looker. These tools already exist with the data that they need, and looking at that information can actually change like the employee's behavior.
Yeah.
So why not just make it simple to just get that content up on the screen? So we have a solution called Dashboard Connections that allows you just to log into these existing websites and get that content up on the screen. And so that makes the content journey really easy because it already exists.
Yeah, you're watching, just in case you happen to just randomly tune in right now on YouTube or at ravepubs.com, you're watching a live Digital Signage Fans. We're literally coming to you live here on the InfoComm 2022 show floor. We're actually in the Sony booth. Actually, Sony was nice enough to build an entire stage in their booth, and we're not just talking about Sony, but Sony was nice enough to provide this stage, and we've got a great set of panels. We're talking about smarter digital signage, because providing the hardware is the simple part really now. I'm wondering about, in fact, speaking of hardware, is 4K a big deal in signage, and is 8K going to matter in signage, or does any of that stuff matter as far as resolution goes, or what's the key
Does
factor?
anybody remember 1080p? Or better yet, if you were to look at a 4K and a 1080, could you really tell the difference? Right, so 4K has been the buzz now for what, 3 years?
Yeah.
Crestron's exhibiting 8K now. It just keeps getting more immersive and more vibrant. Display manufacturers have to constantly up their game on the technology to create that eye-popping experience.
Yeah.
Right. It's on the Crestron campus, we have a number of digital signage, video walls, hallway signage, each of them running something unique. A 4x4 video wall showing people's anniversaries. A couple of signages running people that are featured in monthly forums, things like rAVe, who's speaking where.
Yeah.
No matter where you turn your head, and what's interesting is, anytime you look around, there's a number of employees just gazing at these displays, getting what they need to know. It isn't just about the hardware. It's a complete experience, right? But I don't think they're looking at it saying, wow, that's an incredible 4K content coming at me.
Well, it's interesting you say it, because when you were talking about it, and we'd be remiss to not mention Minority Report in a digital signage panel, because we always have to mention that. Right. But when you watch the movie, no one was saying, wow, the resolution of that projection on the wall when he's doing the running underneath the tunnel is really high.
Right.
Actually, the resolution of most of that content was low. It was the fact that the content was readily available and available at that moment. And it was relevant content.
Right.
That's the critical factor, right? I mean, George, that's what y'all are providing.
Yeah, I mean, if I could add to this, and it's kind of based on our last conversation, if you can kind of think of like a continuum of content, definitely you're going to have some content that's mastered in 4K and 8K, but is that really going to grab people's attention, right? Everybody's got attention deficit disorder these days, so it's also about variety and having multiple content contributors from multiple sources. So we're all proud of our CMSs. We think we've got the Photoshop of the industry, but there's only a small subset of people that are going to actually go in there and develop that content, and then that content's going to age out, right? So you've got to develop great content, but you also have to have a variety of content from multiple sources. So it's a complex, multivariate problem in order to really get the maximum impact.
Christian, what's a rule of thumb there? How often should the content change? And I mean, you argued that it should change time of day depending on who's using the facility. And you have that, obviously we have the capability of doing that because we're connected. We have APIs. We'll talk about those in just a second. But what's a good rule of thumb?
It's funny you say that, because one of the rules of thumb we found a ways back was realizing that you may think that message is a little bit stale, because it may be, but in a corporate setting and a retail setting, you may not be actually hitting that audience as frequently as you think you are.
Yeah, and the ad world says 6 times, right?
6, 7 times, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we found was there are times where a message may be seen but not totally retained.
Yeah.
And by switching up the way that the content looks, but keeping the messaging the same over time, to Bob's point, maybe time of day or time of week, helps get that message in front of the audience. It helps them see it time and time again and retain it, but it doesn't feel like they're just looking at digital wallpaper.
So you, in a really nice way, you said, never underestimate the intelligence of the American public. That's what I heard. We got to keep pushing the content to them so that they notice it, right? I
Right.
mean, that's basically. I'm excited about the opportunities of creative, right? Because I mean, if you walk around this show, even here in the Sony booth, the content is significantly better than it was even 3 years ago. Like what we're looking at on these displays, the design elements is so much better. Why is that? Where's that coming from? Is that because of the CMSs? Is that because we are finally getting creative people in the industry? Or where is that coming from? And is that really the magic sauce? Because there's a subset of people that say that it's all analytics. Like we're going to drive the future of analytics. But there's a subset of people that say that creative is ultimately going to win. Which one is it?
The standards are just getting higher.
Right.
The standards are getting higher
Yeah, I mean-
because of what we're watching on TV, or
Yeah,
what?
we're watching on TV, things are 4K or high resolution, and if you have, bad imagery on a high resolution panel, it's pretty apparent.
We do notice that, right? We are kind of visual snobs in our industry because that V part is video, right? I mean, we do notice that.
We'll pick on just a pixel off. I mean, it's pretty.
And how easy is it to fix, right? All right, so obviously there's not a display company around that's not integrating Android into their products. We also have some that do Windows 10. We also have some that have their own proprietary platform.
RTOS,
Yeah.
there's a number, Tizen, there's a number of them out there.
Exactly, and so what is the future there? I mean, right now it seems if you walk around the show floor, it's Google's kind of controlling the future of these players.
right.
But what is the future of that?
I personally think that the manufacturers, they're seeking what are the most prevalent platforms, right? Crestron XIO Cloud runs on a number of platforms, and there's also some platforms that we need to do some special creative development to support, right? If I'm a display manufacturer, I'm going to want to gravitate to the most applicable platform, so I don't have to get into those nuances of, okay, I want to adopt this technology, but I got to tweak this or I got to adopt this, right? So I think, and I manage all the display integrations with Crestron, right? And so Sony was just like front and center, right? And a few select others that they get it. Their operating systems are very conducive to the technology. Some aren't. That can
You want
be
to tell us who that is?
Yeah.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I mean, if I could jump in here. I mean, I think it's all about flexibility and choice. So Android, I think, normalizes things so that your development team can actually develop once, deploy across a broad range. But again, maybe not completely video optimized, maybe not frame rate optimized, whereas Windows is going to give you a lot of those great video drivers as well. So it's really just giving you that choice to use the right tool for the job.
One of the things that we're seeing is our customers have Android applications themselves, and so they want to deploy these Android applications, to a screen or to a touch screen for a kiosk application. And so Android gives you the ability to do the app switching so that you can run a content management system for some period of time. Maybe you touch the screen,
right,
and then it switches to their application. And so it gives a lot of flexibility to the customer.
HTML5 support, our touchscreens, our scheduling panels are Android-based.
I mean, it's definitely the leader here. I mean, is system on a chip a game changer for the digital signage industry? Is that the big thing of the last 5 years, the big game changer, or what? If not, what is?
I think it is. We have our NVX digital media distribution technology, and we're previewing it on us in a smart display format. It's software-based driven.
So you're taking AV over IP into the display and decoding it using an Android player?
It's yes.
Without a separate decoder, you're doing it straight into the display?
Well, yeah. So the decoding is actually happening, but it's happening. A couple of years ago, Crestron used the Intel OPS standard and had a physical device that went in the bottom of a display. Sony was among them that adopted it. That was a device that had to be plugged in. Now we're moving to SDM formats.
Okay.
A lot of the industries are now moving from those OPS form factors to smaller card-based form factors. And the technology is now, it gets encoded upstream, gets it decoded inside the display, but it's native. There is nothing else extra to buy, have to power externally. The displays are doing all that.
All like when I read surveys about the signage industry and where the growth potential is, stuff like every university is looking for digital signage. Like every university has a plan to either deploy digital signage, upgrade their digital signage, or integrate digital signage over the next couple of years. What are the low-hanging fruit markets? Like where is digital signage hot right now? I mean, it seems like retail, obviously. We've had digital signage in transportation for years, although not real high resolution, let's be honest. I mean, that's not high. Where are the growth potential? Where are the big markets?
What we're seeing is the deskless worker, getting information to them.
The what worker?
Deskless.
Deskless.
So they're a warehouse,
Yeah.
a transportation facility, distribution location. These people they don't have an email address, perhaps. They don't have a desk even. They're not even on a laptop. So they walk into a facility. They want to see what's happening on the floor, what orders are coming, and then intermixed with that, there might be some information about, hey, there's a company picnic on Wednesday. And so I think that's an area that we're seeing a lot of traction.
All right, so information displays inside of a company. That's where what about you?
I mean, we're seeing it across even, the corporate campus. The refresh cycles, because of COVID, have been really long. So we're seeing a lot of pent-up demand, and we're pushing SOC because, based on our last topic, it's just simplifies installation. It's usually good enough from a quality and performance standpoint that it handles 95% of the use case.
The other opportunity is open collaboration areas, right? As the world comes back online, there's going to be less in-room meetings. Everything is going toward hoteling, right? So you got these employees coming in at different days, different quantities of employees. They need signage. It's a boring space if it isn't, right? And so they're wondering what's going to happen when I come back. I got to go and sit next to somebody. Where am I going to be sitting tomorrow? It's very important now to have that engaging experience so that they feel kind of connected, or entertained even in some cases.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. It is going to be a different world when we go back. I mean, ultimately, there's so many different technologies out there, with LCD obviously being the leading technology. But what about e-paper? I mean, e-paper is so inexpensive to operate. It's expensive to deploy, but so inexpensive to operate. Now we have black and white and color e-paper. Is that a game changer, or what are some of the other hardware things that you think are going to drive signage?
We haven't heard about that as being a use case that's on the horizon.
Okay.
At least personally for my.
So other than for room signs, I mean, obviously,
yeah,
I see a lot for you.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of getting to a room, knowing whether it's reserved or not. Things like RFID to enforce, edge case business rules.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to badge into a room, or maybe I'm the host of a room, but I don't want the door to unlock because I got sensitive information sitting on the whiteboard.
Right.
And I, as the host, want to make sure I check in first so that anybody else can get access to it, right?
You were going to say something, Irfan?
Yeah, one area that I think we see it, and I think we'll see more of it, is in a situation where you need a battery power device. So like for desk hoteling,
yeah.
I think that's a pretty good use case.
Yeah, especially for e-paper.
Yeah, exactly, because you don't want to be running cables and powering all of these devices, and it might be a little puck that just says, hey, Paul's going to be sitting here out, from 9 to noon. That's a good use case.
So there's been a lot of talk in the signage world about the connectivity of the personal device to the sign bidirectionally. Like you walk up to a sign and can interact with it, or even simple as wayfinding being downloaded onto your phone. How close are we to simplifying that? Because it isn't simple right now.
We're very close. We're very close.
Okay.
Right, and so a lot of these application providers provide the mobile app experience, right? So I'm at home. I know I'm going to be in the office. My application may say, look, what seats do you want to choose? I know I'm going to be in with 3 colleagues. I want to sit together. And, to the point about reserving a desk, look, there will be a hardware device that shows reserved or not. I go in, I badge into my desk, paperless, QR code that I did hours before I even got to the office.
Yeah.
Right, and that's happening as we speak.
I mean, I would think that someone like Starbucks and some of these retail places would make a better use of that, because you look at somebody, I think Starbucks is still the highest used app in any retail application. People are opening it all every day, so why wouldn't you make it connectable to some of this other content through the signage network? Is this a fringe thing, or is it going to become mainstream? Because isn't this a personal digital signage display? Isn't that what this is?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes just the technology leads the human process component, right? And that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
So that's, we've had desktop, we've had mobile now for 3 or 4 years. We've had the art of the possible. It's been possible for 3 or 4 years, but getting customers and businesses to adopt this takes time.
What's the percentage? Like of all the deployments you do, what percentage have that integration with mobile? Can you share that information?
Probably, our side is pretty large because we have a huge omni-channel push, so we're probably looking at about 50-50.
Oh, that's a lot higher than I thought. So it is. Okay, good. That's surprising. That's exciting, actually.
Yeah.
I'm walking around InfoComm for the last day and a half. The thing that makes me the most excited is LED technology. The CLED is mind-boggling. You walk in, anytime you've seen it since I think Sony first showed it here in 2017, your jaw drops. I mean, everyone knows.
I was standing in front of her about 20 minutes yesterday.
I mean, it's beautiful.
It's cool.
And of course, we've seen LEDs for years in stadiums, but now we're starting to see it come into corporate lobbies. We're starting to see it come into meeting rooms with all the all-in-one displays. Aren't we really at a convergence of meeting room displays and digital signage displays, where we're gonna see it all in one? And isn't LED sort of like a whole different generation of options for us that we haven't had before?
Totally, it gives you more flexibility in the form factors and the visualizations that you can achieve, so you can actually communicate more effectively using different types of form factors. It's not just a 16:9 TV anymore,
right.
And it's not a hefty, bulky video wall that takes a lot of logistics and planning.
Yeah, and you touch on something actually that crossed my mind when you said that, because in the world of creative, we are boxed into 16:9. We are thinking about things in a 16:9, but in reality, with signage, you can put content anywhere, and the displays could be broken apart using LED and other technologies. Even some LCD companies have different size displays.
Or a video wall where you got 9 displays running 9 different pieces of content.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have open, endless possibilities, but we're missing that creative element in many cases. What's the solution for that? Where's the solution? Is it incumbent upon Sony to figure out how to solve that with their player-based CMS that's built into the display? Is it incumbent upon the player companies? Or is it you? Are you going to fix that problem, Christian?
I'd like to.
You're touching so many different options out here. How are we going to solve that problem?
I think it comes back again to content first, because when and backing out from that, the challenges that you're solving. Because when we talk with certain customers about these types of emerging technologies and how they're used, we're always looking at how does that technology help us communicate more effectively. And if it's just we think it's cool, we're going to probably waste a lot of people's money. So you always got to back out and look at what's the problem I'm solving here, and then what type of content and communications would be more effective. And what's nice about these new emerging technologies is it gives us that flexibility to come up with these really creative solutions that we weren't able to do before.
But I do like that. If this seems like it's going to be really cool, I've done that every once in a while and spent a lot of time on it. And I've had my people spend a lot of time on something that didn't pay off. So I get both sides of that. So I'm going to kind of go through, and we're getting close to the end of this panel. We only have a few minutes left. But I want each one of you to kind of share your vision for the future. So if we were sitting here in this panel 5 years from today, so not too far out in the future, what's going to be different? Obviously, the network has changed everything. So we're going to start with you, Bob. What's going to be different?
I think just, everybody hears IoT. I think being able to deploy and manage everything, you're still going to need displays. You're going to need to see something. You're going to need conferencing technology. It's all going to still be there. I think the ability to manage it, and for the hardware and the displays and other ancillary devices to rapidly embrace it, but not be locked into it for 3 years, so that a client isn't locked into an investment and it's more fluid, right?
Well,
so
what I hear you saying is that more of our stuff is going to need to be soft-based rather than
exactly,
hard-based.
Right. Yeah, SaaS-based, whatever you want to call it. Software as a service, deploying just the services, in a SaaS model. The technology, like I had mentioned earlier about the Wedx Crestron's digital media, software-based. I may need it, I may not need it at a certain period of time. Why pay for what I don't need? Flexibility. Don't box somebody in and get them locked into a technology that their needs may change. The pandemic hit, and what do people do? They're refreshing their real estate footprints. They're reinvesting in technology.
Irfan, what's your vision for the future?
Well, there's a lot that can happen in 5 years, but we were just talking about content, and so my mind was there. Recently I've been playing with an application that generates AI-based artwork, and it's quite amazing. And so, 5 years from now, could AI help create content that we put on screens based upon the content that's inside of your corporate organization? Maybe it sees that the CEO's calendar has a certain event, and there's some other content within their drive, and pull it together and create something that can be approved by corporate communications. I think that we're going to see something like that.
So a professional version of Her.
Yeah.
The movie Her, the professional version.
That's
of Her.
coming.
I definitely, I'd love to have that because I need someone to tell me all the time so that I'm stay on time, right? I mean, all of us have that. We have so much stuff going on.
Absolutely.
But go ahead, George. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things from my perspective. Obviously, the hybrid workplace. COVID changed our lives dramatically. So, being at the home office, being able to book remotely, like we were talking about before, being able to have that experience in office. Digital signage is still so important. You get a captive audience that you don't get normally. And then going back to what we were talking about with content, I mean, machine learning, AI, the ability to randomize and generate relevant content. It can't be completely random. It's got to be relevant to your audience, and making sure that that feedback loop is there with a combination of camera optics and things of that nature.
Before I get to you, Christian, I got a quick question because you just brought something up. What is going on in the city of San Francisco regarding that? Like, has that slowed down the deployment of digital signage, the fact that you can't use cameras anymore, or is that not affected things?
Every client's a snowflake. Everybody's got a little different perspective on the Privacy Act, so I think it's just working one-on-one with your clients and getting to that level of comfort. For us, the way we use it, we don't send anything to the cloud. Any kind of pictures or anything are taken. They're in volatile RAM, and they're thrown away as soon as we make a detection.
Okay, so it's making sure they're informed of what's actually going on.
That's right. They're only on the edge device. They're never sent to the cloud, and they're just written over on the next cycle through.
Yeah, I mean, because that was a big deal a couple of years ago. Everybody thought that every camera was going to have to be shut off nationwide because of that. Christian, where do you see us 5 years?
I agree with these guys on a lot of these points. I think that meaningful content that it's driven by AI and multiple data points and IoT is really, really going to be where this is going. We already see it. But then the other side of that being analyzing and finding what's effective with this content, leveraging things like cameras and IoT to help continue to shift that content in real time.
So I could not lead a panel without mentioning Star Wars at some point in time. For those of you that know me, I'm a big Star Wars fan. It's funny how in Star Wars, you look at all 9 movies, the resolution of everything is really low, yet they're able to do holographic displays at the same time. So maybe resolution isn't everything, right? I mean, because I'm waiting for that holographic technology to appear where I can just hold up my phone and have that. This has been a great panel. Y'all have been a great group of people to talk to. I mean, obviously you have the vision for the future, and you did a good job promoting Crestron in a really respectful way, but you do have an industry-leading AV over IP platform called NVX, right?
NVX, yeah, digital media
NVX. But you should definitely go over there and check out each one of these brands as represented over here in the Bravia section of the booth. The Crestron IO Cloud, that you should definitely check that out if you don't understand, because you are the only company that has anything like that in our industry right now. All of the brands are represented over there. I don't know if y'all are going to go over there and hang out, but I want to thank, I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank Sony for hosting this. This has been Gary Kay. I'm with the rAVe agency. This has been our panel on smarter digital signage. I want to shout out to Rich Ventura for allowing us to do this in the Sony booth, and to Sony and the team, the behind-the-scenes team here, who did a phenomenal job setting this up. Thanks to those of you who joined us online at ravepubs.com, as well as on Sony's website, the microsite for Infocom as well. And we are recording this as well. We're going to replay this on my LinkedIn profile later this afternoon. And a copy of this will be made available on Sony's website as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for attending. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you.